The tent is quiet, but the air is thick with tension. An aging father, his eyes dim with blindness, calls for his son to bless him before death. A mother listens from behind the tent flap, her ear racing. A plan begins to form, a plan not born of faith, but of fear. In that single day, deception enters the covenant line. The younger son takes the blessing meant for the elder. But in the chaos and confusion, one truth remains unshaken. God's purpose stands. The covenant promise moves forward, not because of man's schemes, but because of God's sovereign choice. Morning, everybody. In this episode of Remnant Teachings, we're going to be talking about Esau and Jacob and the deception that played in there some. But there was a blessing that was given in this instance that could not be undone. This is the story of Jacob, the chosen vessel. And what we're going to do is we're going to be reading out of Genesis chapters 27 and 28 this week. We're not going to read all of it, but I'll begin here. This is Genesis chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now, Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." So right now, we have Isaac getting so much older. It's time for him to pass his mantle on to the next generation. And as we'll learn a little later in our history, this is a point in time where there was a definite right to being the eldest son. But one thing to keep in mind, too, is Esau already traded his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of red stew. But let's see, so I'll continue here. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth parts of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hands of her son Jacob. So he went into his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am." "Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you've told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him, and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. So we have this deception, and I kind of always thought of this as kind of like the Little Red Riding Hood deception, only a little bit in reverse, because Isaac's the one, his eyes are dim, he can't see. Obviously, there's not much wrong with his hearing at this point, because he identified, you sound like Jacob. You look like Esau. You smell like Esau. You feel like Esau. To me, it's best But boy, you don't sound like it. But here I am. I'm eating this wonderful food. So I guess the next thing for me to do is go ahead and just let's move forward with the blessing. So now the blessing is done, and Isaac leaves. So we continue. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. This whole debacle has gone downhill very quickly. Rebecca, I knew that it would. She knew it would. So let's go ahead and we'll continue a little bit here. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him, and Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob her younger son and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away." As we said a minute ago, this plan went south quick. And right now, Jacob might be safe for a minute. But everyone knows that Isaac's death is coming near, and Jacob needs to leave because it might be the same day that Rebekah would be mourning two deaths. So Jacob is leaving. He's on his way, and let's continue. So Jacob left, and this is Genesis 28, starting at 10. Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set upon the earth. At the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised." Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid, and he said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you." All of this transpiring, like we said last week, we're still in the middle of the Bronze Age. We're not out of the Bronze Age yet. And by Bronze Age, this is where they learned that if they take tin and copper and they can make bronze. So we're in a different culture than we live today. And Haran, where Jacob fled, is up near like Mesopotamia area. And if you recall, this is a land that is rich with idol worship. And we've talked about a lot of that with the giant ziggurats that they would put up. So, and the ziggurat's going to come into play here with the ladder. See, to leave Canaan at this time was to leave the land of promise. But God, when he met Jacob, he didn't meet Jacob in a temple or in an altar. He came to Jacob where Jacob was. And this is how God is sharing with everyone that my presence is not limited by borders or altars or locations, but it says that I am the God who will meet you where you are. But the politics of this time, they were a little bit different. And we talked about this a little bit in our last video, how the land of Canaan was made up primarily of a bunch of city-states. And some of the bigger city-states was Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. And these were just a network of independent yet fortified cities. And the leaders of these cities were like a Saran or also a prince. So it was, one family, and then you would break off and have another kingdom, and that would be a family. So most of these kings throughout the land are probably related in one aspect to another, cousins, relatives to that way. But most of the culture in this time can be tied to the Amorites. They were the leading edge culture of the time. This can also be attributed to it's the first dynasty of Babylon. But during this time, the Amorites, they were very Semitic. But you see, and there were some Semitic kingdoms that developed. And, these kingdoms were, they were around different areas, but all part and centralized in the Amorite culture. And the patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they definitely sat as oddballs in the middle of all of this, what at the time they would have called cultured society. See, and the Egyptians had what was known as the Middle Kingdom, is kind of how this was set up for them. And this was also an important time for them because they were in the land of Canaan establishing trade routes, and sometimes they would go up there and make a little bit of war just to kind of throw their might around. And then, later in the middle of the Bronze Age, the people from Levant would identify with the Canaanite and the Amorite origins, and that's what established the Hyksos dynasty in the Nile Delta, and that ruled Egypt for quite a bit of time. So we kind of understand a little bit more on the culture that Jacob was living in. But let's get into some of the social facts of this time. The big one is the irrevocable spoken blessing. This was not just a Hebrew thing at the time, and this was, we're before Hebrew still, but this was not just that time. The entire region treated covenant wording or promissory wording, like this, passing it on from the oldest to the youngest. If you spoke a blessing out loud and there was at least another person to hear it, then that was the law. It's the same as a will today. Paper just takes away a little bit of the he said, she said. But this was binding and it was irrevocable. It's why Esau had such a hard time that Isaac couldn't say, well, you know what, I'm just going to take it back and I'm going to give it to you. That just could not be done. That's why Isaac's heart sunk, because he knew he had been fooled, but he only had the one blessing to give. This is like a primogeniture society where the oldest son is the one that gets everything. And when Esau sold his birthright, now this wasn't uncommon. Selling your birthright was something that you could do, but remember, when you're the oldest, you get the double portion. When you're the lead, so our example before was if there was $100 and 3 children, one child would get 50%, the oldest, and 2 children would get 25% because they would split what was left. And this was a fact that when Isaac actually gave this blessing to Jacob, he passed his spirituality. He passed a part of his spirituality. That's not something that you can take back and give to someone else. So there was an actual spiritual gift that was handed off, which gave that double portion. So now not only did Jacob get the rights of the eldest, but now Jacob took the blessing. He got a full double portion. But something else that made Jacob's group really stick out was they were kind of a semi-nomadic group. In this time, civilized society now had dwellings. There were cities set up, temples, stores, shops, very much like today. And then on the outskirts, you had nomadic peoples. And what separated Jacob and Isaac a little bit was Isaac only moved as much as he had to, but he kept his nomadic ability in check. So he always had the tent and always was able to pick up and leave if he had to, until finally he hit the one place that he said, this is where the Lord wants me to be. But when Esau took a wife of the local people, that kind of brought a lot of shame to the family, not because of anything other than now she is brought into the fold of our family's potential wealth, our family's legacy. And in this time, what people would do to protect their legacies was they would marry from within their family. So it would most likely be a cousin of, the further we get, they're getting away from first and second cousins. So it's probably going to be a cousin, but it'll be an older cousin, the child of maybe a second or third cousin, something like that. But you still want to marry in the family so that you keep everything in the family. And that's truly where that phrase comes from. So the fact that they wanted to make sure that Jacob got a wife from the same house that Rebekah came from, coincidentally, the same house that Sarah came from. But the one word that I really wanted to look up, because I was curious whether ladder, if the word that they used at that time was actually ladder, or if there would be something else that could represent it better. Because the more that we understand about technology, I think about an older, unadvanced group of people trying to explain it. But the whole ladder principle, I wanted to know if that translated over the same as like a ladder you climb up a house with. And here's what I found out. Yes, it does. The Hebrew word for ladder is sulam. And this word, at least in Hebrew, only appears once in the Bible. And that's right here. See, because the importance of this and the dream, how you could, how did he know how to interpret this dream? Well, because in this time, all of the ziggurats that were built, they were believed to be stairways to walk up to the gods. And what this is doing, this ladder, what makes it so significant is the ladder is showing it's a bridge between heaven and earth with angels going up it and down it. And we'll talk a little more on that here just shortly. But, as we're looking at some of the Hebrew stuff, of course, we have berit, and all of the words that we've already talked about are still coming into play here. From our translations. So don't forget those just because we may not mention them again in the lesson. They're all important and many of them carry forward. That's why I select them. This is the only one that we'll only ever use this one time. We'll see it again, but it's in Greek. But now let's kind of go into our Bible study just a little bit. And this is Genesis 27 and 1 through 29. I'm just going to pull this little portion out. This is when Isaac's Eyes were dim, and he was calling for Esau to prepare him some food. And Rebekah overheard this and was like, okay, I got to come up with a plan. And then Jacob disguises himself, that whole story. Well, this is one of the most troubling yet important scriptures in all of Genesis. And this is a moment where we learn that deception in the shadows was about to be exposed as sacred. God allows this to happen, and his purpose is going to unfold through this deception. See, the blessing that Isaac gave Jacob, it fully mirrored the covenant that God made with Abraham. It was a dominion over nations, abundance of grain and wine, and the promise, the prophetic promise, cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. But what Isaac didn't realize, and Jacob didn't see this yet either, was the covenant line was never about human worthiness. Directly from the womb, God declared, the older shall serve the younger. This was in Genesis 25:23, when Rebekah was questioning why it seems these two babies were fighting so hard in her stomach. And God's purpose, man's manipulation had no part in this. This was already stated from the womb. So even though we look at this and we can identify this as a deception, obviously this deception was part of the plan. But then what happens after this, okay? So Esau, he comes back and he figures out, oh my goodness, my blessing has been stolen. And this is Genesis 27, the 30 through 46. And Esau, I mean, I understand this. I feel for him. He was a young man, and very ignorantly he sold his birthright. So I don't get that, I take away the double portion for me. And then his younger brother and mother trick him out of the rightful blessing that he should have received, according to the tradition. But we'll learn later, especially when we start talking about the kings and we get into Saul and David. I know that's something that a lot of people are watching. And we learn that God looks at the heart. And that is what this is. Jacob's heart was going to be better than Esau's heart. That is why Jacob was selected. Jacob fled to Haran, and this is we're going to get into. This is Genesis 28, and this was 10 through 22. And Jacob fled for Haran, and he stopped for the night. And he used this one stone pillow in the area, laid it down, and what we find out is that Jacob was actually camping in a holy place. Now, seeing that he led Haran, I'm wondering if he wasn't somewhere around where the Oak of Moreh was. I would imagine that the time that Abraham was there, I mean, the oak tree should still be there, but I was curious whether this may be, maybe he crossed to where the Oak of Moreh was, or maybe he was at the same river where we'll see in future where Joshua sees the Lord's the leader of the Lord's army standing in the river. But we'll get into that here. The important part with this right here is when Jacob awoke and he's like, surely the Lord God is in this place and I didn't know it. Sometimes if we have a good spirit and we can discern it, you'll go to a place and you'll feel the place. Oh, it just feels so wonderful. I'm not bragging on our place here, but when we do get visitors that come and visit Jennifer and I, they love the feeling of our place. And it's because we ask the Lord to bless everything here continually. We ask the Lord to bless every guest that comes on the property. And we try to keep these feelings so that, this may not be hallowed ground, but we do try and keep this as a sanctuary. And that's essentially where Jacob was. He just didn't know it. He couldn't understand it. And when the Lord visited him that night, that is when the Lord showed him that there is a gateway. There is a passage between heaven and earth. And we're all going to get to see this open again. And I'll tell you, in John 1:51, Jesus tells Nathanael, "You will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." So Christ is the ladder that Jacob saw, but he saw it as a ladder, not as the Messiah that was to come. You know, Jesus, he was definitely pointing back to Jacob's dream. There's no way around that. And he was declaring himself the ladder. He was telling Nathanael, I'm the ladder, man. I am the gateway. I am that passageway between you and God. There I am. You have direct access to God through me. This is where the covenant with Abraham has this perfect fulfillment. So now the sacrifice of animal blood is no longer required. All that is required of you, and it's so simple, and people don't understand. One, you have to acknowledge Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And two, you have to accept the fact that he gave his life for yours. That's it. You accept Christ into your heart. Jacob's story is one that does teach us a couple, valuable truths about God's grace. One is God's purpose stands. Even when human motives are flawed, when we try to set things in motion that should not be set in motion, it makes no difference to God's plans, and that's what he's telling us. God also tells us that he will meet us in our exile. He visited Jacob wherever he wanted to. See, that goes to what we're always saying when it comes to God. God visits you on your terms. But when God's telling you, with Abraham, God says, you're going to meet me on the mountain. You're going to come up here. So I've got to go and meet God on his terms now. But if God's coming to visit me, I honestly believe that if the Lord Jesus Christ was coming to visit us here today, he would probably have a blue or white shirt, a pair of suspenders, and probably some jeans or cotton pants. Visit us on our terms, in our day, in our style, in our way. That is what God keeps showing us, is that he comes to us, and it's our turn to show the same respect and go to him on his terms. And finally, that God's presence bridges the gap. Through Christ, the ladder between heaven and earth is it's just there. It's an open doorway now. Confess Christ as Lord, and the ladder is there for you. Like Jacob, we might deceive, run. See, and God's plan still finds a way to transform us. God's plan finds a way to call us his own. And God's plan finds a way for people to have forgiveness. See, when Jacob was accepting this promise from God, what he said is when he left, he wanted to come home to a brother that wasn't trying to kill him. And if that was to happen, he would know that truly that is the one true God, and that what was expected of him was blessed. But in the 1970s, early 1970s, Peter Hamill told the story. It became a very famous song, but the name of the song is "Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree." And this was a song that was written about, the original story kind of goes where there was a man that he had committed some crimes. And that's not important what he did. And he was married, and he was in prison for about 2 years. And when he got out of prison, or was getting out of prison, he would send messages to his wife saying that if you have forgiven me, if I am welcome back home, I want you to tie a ribbon on the oak tree that's out front. And if I see a ribbon on that tree, I'll know that I'm welcome back home. And a little time passed. The guy gets his release from prison. And as the bus is taking him home, the man looks out the window and he breaks down in tears. See, he didn't see just one tree with the yellow ribbon tied around it. What he saw was hundreds of yellow ribbons tied around hundreds of trees. It was more than the, yes, you're welcome. It was essentially saying, I want you back. And that's exactly what happened when Jacob came home. And Esau sees Jacob and he's like, my brother, I haven't seen you in forever. The best of what I have is what I can offer you. This image of extravagant forgiveness, it actually became a national symbol of mercy and reconciliation. And this is the same message that Jacob received at Bethel. This is the same message that Esau gives to Jacob when he comes home. Jesus is the bridge. He's the Salam, the prince, the king between heaven and earth, and between guilt and restoration. Father, many of us are like Jacob, striving, scheming, running. But your grace finds us in the wilderness. When the ground beneath us feels uncertain, remind us of the ladder you set up from heaven to earth. Jesus Christ, our bridge, our covenant, our connection to you. Teach us to trust not in our strength or wisdom, but your sovereign purpose. And Lord, may we, like Jacob, awaken to say, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for joining us in this episode. Next episode, we're going to continue on Jacob's journey as he meets Laban. And let's just say it takes one to know one in this situation. But God shapes him into Israel here. And Israel, we'll find out why that means the man who wrestles with God. But until then, walk in grace, walk in covenant, and walk as part of the remnant.
If these teachings bless you and you feel led to give, your support helps us share God's word freely. Scan the QR code to partner with us in this ministry. Thank you, and God bless.